Welcome back to the Drum Mission. Today is another episode of Occam's Razor. Notice I changed the name. The first episode that came out last month where we discussed was Ringo replaced by Bernard Purdie on several of his cuts. I'm not going to talk about that now. If you want to see that, the link will be in the description. Watch that one. Right? And in that episode, I called it Occam's Drums because I thought, hey, maybe I'll call this Occam's Drums because I'm a drum guy and people will know how clever I am. No, not clever. I'm a moron. I was born a moron. I'm still a moron. I intend on dying a moron. Okay?
For I am Costanza, Lord of the Idiots.
So I don't know why I called it that. Stupid. We're calling this show Occam's Razor. And just to reiterate, what is Occam's Razor? Occam's Razor is a philosophy that says, if you have a problem and you have several possible solutions to that problem, the simplest, easiest answer is probably the right one or the most true, right? The more jumping through hoops you have to do, the least likely that it is the right answer. Okay, and what is today's episode about? This is a tough one and a fun one because I love conspiracies like this. I don't believe any of them, but I do like them. I do like going down the rabbit hole and watching what people say. So today we're talking about, is Paul McCartney, or should I say Sir Paul McCartney, dead? All right, I'm doing this in 3 parts. I want to do this in under 20 minutes, God willing. Please, 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 please. Okay, because I really have a hard time when I have to just talk to the camera, me, like this. It's hard to do, you know, and I can put other things in it, but this is the hardest video. Usually I have the drums around me, and that feels safer. Okay, so first, we're going to talk about the actual story, as if you haven't heard it. Second, we're going to talk about some of the clues. Not all the clues, because we'd be here for 9 years. Third, what's wrong about it? Although I'm going to sprinkle what I think is wrong about it throughout this video. Okay? All right, so let's start. Part 1. The story. Here is the story of Paul McCartney's death. On November 9th, 1966, allegedly, Paul and the boys, depending which video you watched, it's either just Paul and Ringo, and I can actually believe that it's Paul and Ringo, because Ringo often complained about Paul complaining about his drumming. Anyway, they have a big fight about something, whether it's Paul and Ringo or Paul and the other guys in the band. It was Paul against those guys. Have a big fight about something. Paul throws his bass down and runs out of the studio and gets into his car. And some people say it was a Mini Cooper, a black Mini Cooper. Others say it was an Aston Martin. I don't know. Most of the videos I watched say that it was a black Mini Cooper. And he races out, mad as hell, at all the guys in the band, and he goes through a red light, and boom, big car accident, and he dies. And of course, when he dies, you know, he gets decapitated. There's a few videos that say it was just that he was found in a pool of blood, but a lot of them say he was decapitated. This is my first red flag. Here's my little sprinkling. Why is it always decapitation? Doesn't matter what Hollywood star dies in a car accident, they always get decapitated. I have, for the life of me, tried to figure out a way that if you're in a car, how you would get decapitated in that accident. You'd have to get your head over the windshield, not only through the windshield. I don't know how you die in a car by decapitation. I don't know. No clue. I don't know if it's because that's a more horrific story that it always becomes that. All right, let's put that aside. So, the record company, who doesn't want to lose their cash cow, the Beatles, making all that money, their albums are selling like crazy, anything the Beatles do, everybody loves. So they get an imposter, a guy, William Campbell, again, depending on which video you watch, William Campbell, who had won a Paul McCartney look-alike contest. And they teach him to play the bass, teach him to sing like Paul McCartney, and put him in place of the Beatles. They help him write songs, John Lennon helps him write songs and all that. They swear the Beatles to secrecy. The first NDAs that we know about, right? Non-disclosure agreements. They're not supposed to talk about it with anyone. All right. That's one iteration. And does anybody think that John Lennon would keep quiet? Okay. Another iteration is a guy named Billy Shepherd, who was already a musician, had his own band, and had a couple of albums out. And I listened to a few of those recordings. I'm sorry, Mr. Shepherd. Not very good. I don't know if he's alive now for real or dead. Not very good. Nowhere near a Yesterday or Here, There, and Everywhere or I Saw Her Standing There, which would have been written before the alleged accident happened. Anyway, they take Billy Shepherd and they teach him to play left-handed because he was a right-handed guitar player, and they give him plastic surgery, and because he was already a musician, it was easier, and they teach him to sing and play like Paul McCartney, and, you know, he becomes a great writer as he goes along. So, finally, the rumor started to spread because it was a similar car that Paul McCartney had in the car crash that Paul had died. And fans started to call and inundate Derek Taylor with, hey, did Paul die? Paul died. So much so that they put an article, and I'm posting that here somewhere, I don't know where, and you can read it, and I'll pause it too, between part one and part two, that says, hey, you may have heard that Paul McCartney died. He didn't. He's very much alive and well. Don't worry about it. He's okay. He's fine. As a matter of fact, depending which videos you watch, some say Paul McCartney was on vacation during this time. He was supposed to have the accident on November 9th. Others say he wasn't, but he wasn't driving that car. A friend drove the car home. Paul drove his moped home. There's all sorts of little different things to that. Even conspiracies of the non-conspiracies. But for me, before I close part one, I just want to say the Beatles would break up in 3 years because of John. And allegedly the Beatles were being forced to keep this quiet, because the record company wanted to make a lot of money on Beatles music, and they didn't want anybody to, well, they didn't want mass hysteria to happen. All right, let's put the mass hysteria aside. There's even some videos that claim MI6 and the CIA were in on it. Really? For a pop star? They wouldn't have done that for Martin Luther or for JFK? Right? You wouldn't put a body double in for them if you want to control and cut down on mass hysteria? And look at Martin Luther. That's, to me, that's the best answer. It's no secret that the American government did not like the civil rights movement. After MLK got assassinated, why not put a body double in for him? Say he was in the hospital, come out and have a guy, you know, change what he was saying to fit what the government wanted him to say. Okay, let's put that aside. I mean, if you're going to do it with the CIA and MI6, why not do it for people who can really affect the world than a pop star? Okay. All right. Take a look at this. We're ending part one. Part two, if you want to go grab a little cup of coffee or whatever, we're going to talk about some of the clues. Not all of them. There's a million. A few of them. All right. Be right back, guys. Welcome to part two. Let's talk about the clues. Let's do a little lead up to the clues. So it's 1969. Abbey Road just came out. And there's a radio station in Detroit, WKNR. And a DJ named Russ Gibb, who is going to be premiering the album or debuting the album. And he gets an anonymous phone call from a guy who calls himself Tom, who starts to explain to him on the cover of Abbey Road there are all these clues that Paul is really dead. We don't know who Tom is, except there is a guy named Tom Harper who, at the same time that this was happening, Tom Harper went to Drake University. And he was writing for the college paper and doing a review on Abbey Road. Now, some people say that this was tongue-in-cheek. Others say he was a true believer in the Paul's conspiracy. And, you know, even though that little blurb came out in Beatles Monthly saying, hey, Paul's fine, he's good, he's fine. You know, there were people who said, oh, he's not, he's dead, and they're lying to us. They're lying to us. Yeah, I know they are. So you know there were people like that because human beings are nuts. Okay. And Tom Harper decided he wasn't going to do just a regular review. He was going to do the review, but at the same time, talk about all the clues that he found on Abbey Road saying that McCartney was dead. Okay? So what are the clues he said he found? Now, most of these we've heard of and we've seen before. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to talk about a few of them, right? Let's first talk about the fellas in the picture, right? They're walking across the pavement, right? And we have First John in white. He's supposed to be the minister, right? Then we have Ringo. He's the pallbearer. Then you have Paul, no shoes on, right? He got a cigarette in his right hand, and he's left-handed, right? He's the dead guy. This is also silly. And then you got George behind them, dressed in jeans and a jean shirt, a denim shirt, and he's the gravedigger, right? Well, we'll start with them, right? Oh, by the way, and there's a Volkswagen right next to them. This part really is a coincidence that says LMW 28IF on the plate. I'm posting that here so you can see. The LMW allegedly means Linda McCartney, widow, and 28 if means if Paul had lived, he'd be 28 when this picture was done. Okay, so before we get to some of the other clues, once this came out, people heard it, and because people are what they are, they thought, maybe there's more clues, and they started to buy the other albums. So the record company wasn't too down about this, because not only did Abbey Road sales go up, but all the other albums from 66 up went up. People were now looking for clues to see what the Beatles told them about Paul. Remember, the Beatles were putting clues in, allegedly, because they felt so bad that the record company had told them not to say anything, right? They'd all, you know, were sworn to secrecy, so they put these little clues in. Hey guys, believe it or not, it's the next day. Woohoo! So let's debunk some of these Abbey Road conspiracies. And I'm starting with this one because this was the first one that really went out to the public of all the clues were there, right? Excuse me. And there's way more clues on Sgt. Pepper's, and of course in the lyrics of the White Album, and then there's the backward stuff. And really, I'm not going to do all these. We're going to do Abbey Road. Maybe I'll do another video one day. I'll do a live one. We'll talk about it with everybody. But there's some of these Paul McCartney's conspiracy videos, pro or con, are like 4 or 5 hours long, and I ain't doing that. I'm going to be 62 in like less than 33 days. Nope, 33 days. I ain't spending 5 hours talking about this. Okay. So, what you don't hear from a lot of the conspiracy guys is there are like 5 or 6 other versions of that shot of the boys crossing the street. Some where Paul's wearing sandals, some where he isn't, some where they're going a different direction, some where the boys are sort of in the foreground, but more of the focus is on the studio and the doorway of the studio. So there's all that kind of stuff. And the Volkswagen was just parked there. You know, and back then, there wasn't Photoshop and all that stuff to draw on the license plate. I mean, that would be very, very difficult to do. For if you've watched that Get Back series on Disney, they didn't want to go to the roof. They didn't want to, these guys weren't into doing all that. They crossed the street because it was the easiest thing to do. And if you listen to some of the stories and get back at where they were going to do that picture from and original names for that album, like, oh my goodness, they were going to like maybe go to Mount Everest and all these kind of things, and they were too lazy. Let's just cross the street. Okay, all right. The biggest thing you hear, or one of the biggest things you hear, is that, you know, Paul McCartney's got a cigarette in his right hand. He's left-handed. Aha! Aha! This is where I have unique expertise. All right, clear the field. No more pictures around me. I'm left-handed. However, I brush my teeth with my right hand. I comb my hair with my right hand. I can play drums pretty good right-handed with my hands, not so much with my feet. I open doors almost always with my right hand. As a matter of fact, when you listen to the studies about left-handed people, there are less left-handed people that are, thou shalt be left-handed and use only the left hand. Whereas left-handed people, because it's a right-handed world, have to learn to accommodate and use our right hands more. Where right-handed people are much more, you shall only use your right hand. God has a little bit of a Bronx accent in my in my Bible. Of course, I don't really have a Bible. All right, so right-handers aren't as ambidextrous-ish as lefties because of our culture. So Paul had the cigarette in his right hand. So what? Maybe he thought he was passing the camera. It would look cool to have the cigarette in his right hand. Utterly ridiculous to build a conspiracy that he's dead over that. The shoes, he said his feet were hot. To me, the road will be hotter, and I have a theory of that I'll bring at the end. And if we go back in other clues, of course you have the backward, playing the tunes backwards, and the famous ones, probably Revolution number 9, you hear Turn Me On Dead Man, Turn Me On Dead Man. At the end of I'm So Tired, that gibberish that you hear, if you play that backwards, you have Paul is Dead, Miss Him, Miss Him, Miss Him. Okay, I actually think Revolution number 9, those backward sounds are there. I actually think that might be the case, and we'll get to that at the very end. There's a couple of other ones too, in I'm the Walrus and things like that. I'm going to tell you the truth. Human beings are pattern recognition machines. Pattern recognition is an evolutionary thing. We became very good at it, and through the course of our becoming who we are now, it may have saved our lives many, many, many times. You think about the caveman that would hear leaves rustling outside the cave, and sticks or branches being broken or stepped on. He goes out and there's a tiger or a bear. And then he learns that when I hear that, I'm not going out of the cave. I'm going to hide in the cave and get my people to hide in the cave. There are no constellations. We found a star for the ships when they were steering to figure out where north was. And the easiest way to find the star was to say, oh, if I put this star together with that star and that star, it looks like a Big Dipper. There's no Big Dipper in the sky. That's a pattern that we see. And that pattern recognition helped those folks to find their way in the ocean or the water, wherever they were. So if you already have the conclusion, or in your mind, I'm looking for a clue that Paul is dead, and somebody says, play this backward, you'll hear this, you're going to hear it. Because we've heard that from Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and everybody hears it. And I'm going to tell you, I listen to that Paul is dead, miss him, miss him, miss him. I don't hear it. There's another one about burying Paul or something in I Am the Walrus. I don't hear it. I don't hear it. I don't know. So we can, and then there's a whole bunch more clues on the Sgt. Pepper's album that we're not going to get into. So what I'm trying to say is, you can try to find anything you want if you're looking for it. If you have your conclusion and you're looking for evidence to support your conclusion, you can find that. It's very difficult, I believe, for human beings to completely unbias themselves and let the facts completely speak to them. There's always a little bit of bias. So that's why I want to debunk some of these Abbey Road clues. And there are debunks, and you can go to other videos and see all of them for Sgt. Pepper's and almost all those clues. But there's not good debunks for all of them. For all of them. I will be back with part 3. I'm going to have you just peruse through all these different shots that I found. We'll come back for part 3, and I'll give you my Occam's razor and my conclusion. Some of those other shots. I think I would have got a kick if Paul had chosen one of those. Some of them had the Volkswagen in it, some of them didn't. That's what we're talking about. All right, Occam's razor. In conclusion, okay, so either I got my Speedway coffee. By the way, you know, Speedway makes really good coffee. I'll tell you, I like this coffee better than Starbucks and any of that stuff. And it's like $1.79. Hold on. So either you can choose to believe that all those people that work with the Beatles and possibly training this imposter. Life magazine, there was an interview done shortly after the Beatles broke up. And the reporters went to his farm in Scotland to find him. I think it was Scotland, I might be wrong about that. And there's a picture of Paul. When you hold that picture up to the light on the other side of the page, there's a car ad. And it looks like the car ad is near his head. And of course, there are people who think that's another clue. So that would mean the Life magazine people were in on this secret. The people who printed the book for Sgt. Pepper's, the people who published it and printed it, they would have something to know about the secret. George Martin, maybe a Giles. Is it Giles or Giles? Maybe Giles. Certainly Derek Taylor, certainly Mal Evans, all these people that were involved with them, certainly secretaries. All of these people, either you can choose to believe that none of these people spilled the beans. Paul's real family. There's a guy, after the Beatles broke up in 69, 70, there's a guy running around with Paul's name saying he's Paul. And he was able to get record deals and stuff because of Paul's name. None of them, not a cousin, not a brother, ever said anything. Either you can choose to believe that all these people knew this conspiracy and that the Beatles somehow were able to slip out and not let the record company see them in 67 and put all these little clues in and sneak it around without the record company saying, hey, we don't want people to know Paul is dead. Even though later on they'd be okay with people seeing the clues because it made them buy the records. But that was after the Beatles broke up. So you can choose to believe that. Or you can choose to believe that John and his animosity, his anger toward Paul, and you listen to the song How Do You Sleep, where he actually wrote the line, those people were right that thought you were dead.
Those freaks was right when they said you was dead.
And then he writes that whole song is about how angry he was at Paul McCartney. And John is known for his rebellious nature. He told everybody that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus. You could choose to believe that he never said anything, because really, the way the conspiracy is told, that he wasn't really mad at Paul because Paul was dead. He was mad at this guy, Billy Shepherd. He didn't like him because Billy tried to take over the Beatles. Make the Beatles his backup band. So you can choose to believe that John, in his whole life in those 10 years, even when he got signed with Geffen Records, Double Fantasy is not on Apple, it's with Geffen, that John didn't say a word, that with all of the things that he was angry at, all of the people that he upset through the years by things he said, that he didn't like some of Elvis's stuff, and all of the bands he didn't like. He didn't like Steely Dan, he mentioned that. All the things he was outspoken about. This secret he kept. George Harrison. He didn't get assassinated. George Harrison died of a brain tumor. They knew his time was coming. Paul was the one that brought him into the Beatles. They were buddies. George, on more than one occasion, mentioned how much he loved Paul, even when they were fighting. And when he had just weeks left to live, he doesn't say, I gotta tell everybody, the man out there masquerading as Paul McCartney is really Billy Shepherd. And finally, Billy Shepherd himself. Everybody that was keeping the secret is gone. John's gone, George is gone, George Martin's gone. So many are gone. I'm sure many of the record company execs are gone. Why wouldn't Billy Shepherd say, hey everybody, you know what? The guy that wrote Band on the Run and Live and Let Die, it's not Paul McCartney, it was me. Why wouldn't he do that for his own integrity, his own personhood, to say, yes, I replaced Paul, Paul died, Paul was great, but I've done great things too. Me. Why would he never say the truth? And you can say, well, people would be upset. Really? I wouldn't be. Oh, wow. I love Being on the Run. I love the song Live and Let Die. I love a lot of what Paul did throughout the years. I like what he did with the Beatles, allegedly, when it was Billy Shepherd. Helter Skelter's a great song. So you could choose to believe all that has happened, or Occam's razor. Paul's alive, and he's with us. And let me just mention two more things. Some of the clues, like the backwards stuff in Revolution number 9, like the Black Rose on Sgt. Pepper's. The Black Rose, that's when this thing first started to surface. I think Paul might have done that on purpose. Said, well, they all say I'm dead. I'll just wear black rose. I can't find any more red roses. Rather than call up and say, hey, deliver more red roses, he just wore the black one. He thought it was funny. And John, actually, they didn't want Revolution number 9 on the White Album. Paul McCartney and George Martin said, no, do that with Yoko Ono on one of your own projects. And I think John was so angry, he said, can you read between the lines, Paul? And that might be for real, because that is pretty clear. Where John is saying, I'm going to keep this going, this turn me on dead man thing, let people wonder that if he's dead or real or not, just to piss him off for telling me not to do this. Anyway, these are my opinions. And I'm not afraid of sharing, and I had fun. If you've got different opinions, put it in the comments. Be nice. If you're really stupid and mean, I would delete you, but otherwise, it's all right. Anyway, I enjoyed making this. It's longer than I wanted it to be, and I will see you on the next one. Next one, I promise. It'll be a drum cover, and I think you'll be surprised. It's not the one I thought I was going to do. It's a different one. Anyway, see you on the next one, guys.
John wrote the tune Glass Onion, and when we wrote it, we were thinking specifically, I mean, he wrote it mainly, but I helped him on it. And we were writing it, we were thinking specifically of this whole idea of all these people who kind of write in and say, who was the walrus, John? Were you the walrus? Or is Paul the walrus? Or who's the walrus? So John, I mean, he happened to have a line kind of going, all, and he said, yeah, the walrus was Paul. And we had a great giggle, you know, saying, yeah, let's do that. Let's put this line in, because everyone is going to read into it. It's going to go crackers.